Welcome back to another episode of Uncut and Uncensored, and today's guest doesn't fix you, heal you, or tell you what to do. He dismantles the stories you tell yourselves, the ones that keep you stuck, small, or scared. He's someone people turn to when success, love, or money isn't the problem, but when something still just feels off. Peter Crone, welcome to Uncut and Uncensored.
It's sad to see. I mean, obviously, depending on the different stage of life, I mean, these younger generations I think there's, whether it's intentional or not, like they've all been somewhat brainwashed through devices, media. Back in the day, I know growing up, like you had to become not only resilient because you're running around in woods and on bikes and jumping off stupid things because you're outside playing. There was no mollycoddling, dropping off in SUVs at school. I mean, I can remember when I was a kid, I was 6 and I was walking 20 minutes to school and back, every day. And I'm not saying, obviously, in this society, that's typically not safe.
And the trouble is, I really don't feel like schools right now are focused on what they really need to learn. And that, for me, it's very hard to get behind myself because I look at the schoolwork and I'm like, first of all, I'm having to do the homework. Why? And then I'm also thinking, half of this they're never used. That really upsets me too. I want my sons to go and learn about things that really excite them, like AI.
When people do say things like that, I'm so worried what other people think about me, I let them know, no, you're not. You're worried what you think other people think about you. If somebody came up to you and was like incredibly derogatory in Chinese and you wouldn't, it's like it doesn't affect you. So again, like the quotes, I write, I say that other people's words can only hurt you to the degree that you already believe them.
Oh, that's interesting. I can't believe you're here in person.
Whoop, whoop.
Yeah.
We made it happen.
On my sofa.
Only took me over an hour to get her out here, but
so worth it.
So worth it, Tom.
So worth it. I'm giving you a nice cup of tea and we can settle in. And look, your shoes are off and you're comfortable.
Yes, very.
So, Peter, that really is, that's how I met you. And it's really what you do. You rewire people and their self-beliefs.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's more, I would say it's a dissolution process. Like most people, it's natural that whatever your issues are, that you want to come up with solutions. And I always say I don't solve problems, I dissolve them.
I mean, you're here to speak at the World Government Summit. I mean,
Yeah.
Why would they call someone like you? What is it that
Why wouldn't they, darling?
That's what I'm asking you. I'm asking you because they're leaders and they're all the top of governmental politicians here. And obviously they have brought you in for a reason. I'm asking what that is.
Well, I think in the theme to this particular summit, I guess they've done it quite a few times and there's thousands and thousands of people and dignitaries. And so it's an honor to be part of it, but they're really looking at how governments can improve things such as longevity, wellness, and so that's what I'm speaking to specifically. I let people know that in order to have true health, you've got to have mental health first. So I'll be speaking about that. And then I actually am going down to Abu Dhabi to speak, do a keynote, and also speak at the Cayenne Festival, as the biggest wellness festival. So there's a multitude of things that I'm doing here, including sitting on your couch.
That's amazing. I mean, I've been watching your career since I think we met a few years ago now.
Yeah.
And I've just been watching your career go from strength to strength. You're everywhere right now. And, I wonder if why do you think that is? Why do you think people need this message so badly? Because it seems that people are more comfortable with failing at what they do than they are with changing.
Yeah, because that's a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's one of the imperatives of the ego. It wants to be right about itself. So when people say things like, I knew it was too good to be true, or this would never happen for me, or it's not what they want, but nonetheless, they get to be right about their current conditioning. So I think, to your point, why people are sort of gravitating to my work more and more is I'm not in the solution business. I'm not trying to fix people's problems. I'm helping them understand the wiring that has them create problems in the first place. And if you undo that, then abracadabra, things become much more effortless.
And, obviously rewiring someone that's been told something or, been brought up a certain type of way.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm 50 years old. Like, how are you going to rewire me exactly? Like, how can you unlearn what you've learned for so many years?
It certainly becomes relatively more difficult with age. The older mind is, the more ingrained its thought processes are, even physiologically. So it comes down to willingness and also typically the degree of trauma. Like if somebody's really, really struggling with something, then just through necessity, somebody's going to be more disciplined to want to make change. But if it's sort of the everyday ailments and woes that people struggle with, you can become resigned. Even people who are going through financial difficulties, relationship difficulties, health difficulties. If there's been a theme, then it's almost become commonplace that, well, that's just the way it goes, and there's this cynicism now and apathy. So that also becomes the biggest obstacle then to actually want to make change and realize, no, it doesn't matter how old you are. Underneath it, without sounding too esoteric, you're this timeless, boundless, limitless being who still wants to express itself.
I mean, I get that a lot because obviously I speak to so many women. And I think the more successful I'm becoming now, the more people are sort of leaning in and going, well, how are you doing it, right? That it must be luck, or it must be, I don't know, someone gave you a hand up. Whereas I want to teach women, I think when I met you, I think I was in my court case and all of these things that I was going through and getting divorced.
Yeah.
I think people have told themselves that they can't get back up, or women especially. And I think I have taught myself that, you can change very easily where you are just by taking action.
Yeah.
And many people remain stuck in low-paid jobs, bad relationships, all of these things, because they literally can't envisage another way.
Yeah.
Why? I mean, and I find it, I actually have beautiful, intelligent, articulate women that come to me, and sometimes it takes all my strength not to want to go, the fuck are you doing?
Right.
It's sort of like the shock of how stuck they are. It's like their hands are in glue and their legs are, and they're like, I can't do anything. And I'm like, there are so many things people can do to help themselves. Sometimes I'll go, look around the house. You don't have any money. Maybe you have old things that you can sell. Anything, to get yourself back. People don't think outside the box.
No, and as I was saying earlier, because the imperative of the ego is to sustain itself, which means you have to keep repeating the same external events so you have evidence for your own reality, right? One of the things in regards to change, people often say, I don't have enough commitment. Or in relationships, we'll say so-and-so is not committed. And one of the distinctions I teach
He's
is...
just a playboy. He'll never settle down, but
Right.
Everyone settles down.
Everyone
Eventually.
does or doesn't, but the distinction which is powerful for people to realize is, even in this case, the playboy, whoever that might be, every human being is unconsciously committed. So what that means is it's self-fulfilling. So you might not be committed in terms of what you say you want, relationship, your finances, getting in great shape. You recognize that you aren't disciplined, you're lazy, and say, I'm not committed. No, if you're not committed to what you want, you're committed to your wiring that says you can't have that. Does that make sense? So there is a commitment. It's just
The wrong way.
it's
Completely the
deep
wrong way.
subconscious. And that's very hard to overcome. That's what I'm dissolving for people, is to recognize, at what point did you decide that you're not enough, or that you're not loved, or that you're worthless?
What
And
about- Sorry.
that's okay.
There's a whole generation of women now that are getting divorced because divorce is probably at its all-time high, or single after however many years together, who have been provided for, right? And there are a lot of those women, we all know them, that start beautiful women that have, got beautiful husbands and, think their lives are set, and suddenly, especially in this country and other countries, but suddenly find themselves with nothing. Nothing to fall back on, no job, they haven't worked in the workforce, and then they're petrified, right? And, I have always said to women, don't give up your job, don't give up who you are, all of these things, regardless of what kind of life you've created for yourself. But these women are those are the women that I find that are completely lost with which way to go, because they haven't had a career in any specific place. They don't have a source of income. Like, do you have, do you teach a lot of women like this, or have you had a lot of women like this? Because that's what I have been seeing so much of, and I don't really know how to rewire these women into thinking,
Right.
We're not just looking for the next man, we're looking, how can you help yourself?
Yeah. And depending on the age, again, that can become super overwhelming and scary. I mean, that's something that I think people have to sit with to begin with, is it's okay that right now you don't know what to do, because the panic of not knowing there's one thing to not know what to do, but then panicking about not knowing what to do only exacerbates it.
See, but my thought process is there has never been a better time to not know, to learn something or to have to start a career.
Yeah.
Because we have the internet, we have, all of these things available to us to do a side hustle and make money,
Yeah.
which are much more simple than it was 10 years ago. You can do so many more things. So I see an opportunity where maybe other people go,
Yeah, so that's the practical sort of resolution of a situation, but what you're missing is what is their internal program that doesn't have them feel that same sense of possibility, right? So we could argue that you see it that way because you've got your comfort, you've got your partner, there's a feeling of safety. So the biggest thing that any human being wants is that sense of security. So,
but I didn't.
Okay.
I was down to my last 20 grand about 4 years ago. Barely, had rent, couldn't pay anything, and had to sell as much as I could to fund, everything and start again.
yeah.
So my partner, with all due respect, who I love dearly, it was 20 years younger. It's not like he could bail out an entire family.
Right.
So I didn't have that
Yeah.
nest.
But so my point, you had the underlying belief that you could establish it or recreate it or imagine it.
Or you have no choice.
Well,
If you sit
fear
down,
is a
who's-
great motivator.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
So fear can, really animate and cause action, and sometimes fear can create complete desperation and helplessness.
But also my ego wasn't going to let me lose everything.
Which is
that's for
precisely
sure.
what I'm talking about, right? So the wiring is the ego, the personality, the identity, whatever word you want to, use. So for you, you obviously had a certain guttural, fortitude to get past whatever adversity you had. For other people, the adversity only confirms their sense of helplessness, and it becomes self-fulfilling.
But the problem is, as you know, that the sense of worthlessness and the unfulfilled feeling only leads to, well, I'm not going to do anything because none of it will work. Nothing's going to help me. I can't have what she has. Instagram hasn't helped that, because it does give this fake sort of world that everyone else is doing so incredibly well.
Yeah.
And you're so behind.
Yeah.
But, I do feel that people have to get the work ethic back and the, the balls back, because we've kind of bringing up a generation of like pansies.
Yeah, no, it's a perfect word. I often do my memes on Sundays, which you might see periodically, and I say that the current generation particularly, they are ashamed of nothing but offended by everything.
Yes.
And it's just like no one's got a spine. And also no one has any sense of respect or discipline. No, I mean,
Don't want to do anything that's hard.
Right. Yeah, it's become entitled, lazy. Yeah. And that's why I guess a lot of countries seem to be heading towards this sort of socialist, communist, everyone's equal, everyone gets a fucking trophy. And, my day, it's like, no, you work your ass off to establish anything.
That's why I think the Middle East works so well, because we do have
Yeah.
very, very strong boundaries. And I actually like the boundaries here, because you know exactly where you stand. You know what is... We can still live in a pretty free world.
Yeah.
I consider myself free when I can sleep in my house with my windows open and my door unlocked if I have to, because my kids are out, and not panic that everything will be, taken out of my house by the time I get home.
Right. Yeah.
But I do feel that, as people get older, or, as we've gone on, that you either get balls or you get sort of like, I'm never going to have it now.
Castrated.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's sad to see. I mean, I obviously, depending on the different stage of life, I mean, these younger generations I think there's, whether it's intentional or not, like they've all been somewhat brainwashed through devices, media. Like back in the day, I know growing up, like you had to become not only resilient because you're running around in woods and on bikes and jumping off stupid things because you're outside playing, And there was no mollycoddling, dropping off in SUVs at school. I mean, I can remember when I was a kid, I was 6, and I was walking 20 minutes to school and back, every day. And I'm not saying, obviously, in this society, maybe here, but, that's typically not safe. But it creates a little bit more of
independence.
Definitely a lot of independence, but wherewithal, critical thinking. You become, you show initiative. And for me as a kid, I sort of had to entertain myself a lot too. There weren't like video games just to sit and, become hypnotized looking at a screen. I think kids have just become checked out. And for them now, going outside is like a punishment. It's like that's all we did.
And the trouble is, I really don't feel like schools right now are focused on what they really need to learn.
No.
And that, for me, it's very hard to get behind myself, because I look at the schoolwork and I'm like, first of all, I'm having to do the homework. Why? I didn't pass the first time round. So, and then I'm also thinking, half of this they're never used. That really upsets me too. I want my sons to go and learn about things that really excite them, like AI or, business management, anything other than, Roman literature and I don't know what. You know what I mean?
Algebra.
Entrepreneurship. My son is taking that right now. All of these things. I think if we wired people or started them. See, I was brought up in a very cold way. Okay. My sons are very, very, very attached to me and loving and kind. And it's so funny. This is something else that I find sad is that, if a boy tells you he loves you or hugs you, then, society sort of goes, well, he's weak and pathetic, and I want them to be a man. And we're telling our children and the younger generation that to be a man, you have to be, tough macho and mean and macho, which I don't understand why you want to beat the love out of people. And that is also what's wrong with today. I mean, people are more concerned with what other people think of them than what is really happening in their own lives.
Well, it looks that way. So there's a subtle distinction when people do say things like that. I'm so worried what other people think about me. I let them know, no, you're not. You're worried what you think other people think about you. So it's actually self-doubt, self-inquiry of, worrying about oneself. Because you don't know what other people are thinking, and other people's thoughts don't affect you. If somebody came up to you and was like incredibly derogatory in Chinese, and you wouldn't, it's like it doesn't affect you. So again, like the quotes, I write, I say that other people's words can only hurt you to the degree that you already believe them.
Oh, that's interesting. That's a really good one.
Right. So that's where we become our own worst enemy, is using it's a deflection, right? If we think that somebody else is the cause of our suffering, we're now stuck in victimhood, which again only perpetuates that lack of sovereignty or authorship.
That's why you always say the ones closest to you are the ones that can poke you the most, because they know your weak spots.
Well, and also you're much more available. You're much more open, because you create those tethers, and there's a real vulnerability, which is the beauty of romantic relationships or personal family relationships. When there's other people on the street or people in the workplace, it's easier to be disconnected, but you can still be affected by other people's thoughts if you're living in your own world of some sense of inadequacy, insecurity, or scarcity.
So why do you think we want to poke our partners so much? When you're in an argument, say, because just to win. I do like to do that.
I could see that for sure. The prerogative being to be right. That's the, again, a quote I use. I say,
no, I'm always right anyway. Before we've even started, let's take that out, because I'm right. But I want to poke him to get a reaction.
Yeah, so I think from the feminine side, you're looking for a reaction as a form of, ironically, insecurity from your side, right? Because it's the feminine's way of testing a boundary to see, am I still safe? Does he still care? And depending on how that can go too far, it can have the opposite effect. It can actually push someone away.
Oh, to see maybe how far you can go before they do go, fuck you, I'm off.
Yeah, exactly. And then that becomes, unfortunately, self-sabotage. If the woman is really in a space of being sufficiently insecure that she's always looking for that versus establishing her own security. Again, I say true security is the absence of the need for external security. But it takes a big human to get to that place.
Why do you think age gap relationships trigger people so much in today's society?
Gosh, like anything, it's just the sort of the traditional way that people think life should be. You know, it goes against whatever they've been taught. And sometimes it could be a myriad of different, subtler reasons. It could be jealousy. It could be sort of feelings of their own insecurity or inadequacy. It's an interesting topic because I think at the end of the day, you could argue that it's really, it gets a little esoteric, but your connection with somebody is really less to do with your chronological age and more to do, for me, with your spiritual and emotional age.
Yeah, because you always get those people that go, oh, it won't last.
Yeah.
It can't last.
Yeah, which is fine. That's their perspective. It's like Henry Ford's quote. He said, whether you believe you can or you believe you can't, you're right.
And also, what is lasting, by the way? A few years? Do normal relationships last, or whatever everyone else perceives what love should look like today?
Yeah, again, that's what I'm saying. It's all against these societally imposed norms of what it's supposed to look like. Like I can remember working with a big producer in LA, and he was really struggling with the fact that he'd gotten divorced. And as a result of the divorcee event, it triggered his own feeling of being a failure because, he messed up. And then he was using his parents as an example, saying, yeah, but my parents have been together for 49 years or something. And I'm like, okay, we'll describe their relationship. And he's like, well, they probably haven't slept in the same room for 40 of those years. They're always bickering, but they're together. I'm like, but you see, you're under the impression that because they stay together, that's a win. I would say you're actually way more successful than your parents because at least you honored something that didn't work.
Oh my God, yes.
Right?
Yes, that is such the British way. That word, as I've always said, which I hate, is stick it out and, make it work. Why are we conditioned? Why are we conditioned that way? Because it makes them feel more better. Why does it make people feel better if we're all miserable at home, but we're stuck together? Why does it make people feel like you're a success to get to the end with the same person like that, but you really, really hate each other? No, yeah. I'm interested. It's actually mind-blowing to me.
No, it is.
Because we've come so far, yet that is still the preferred way. Mm-hmm. I'd rather marry 16 times than have that.
Right. No, and I love your attitude about it. I think it's sort of that subtle badge of honor, where humans are really designed around appearance. We want to look a certain way. Everybody is concerned. Obviously for women, it's really focused on beauty, cosmetics, clothing, hair, skin, eyes, boobs, butts. It's very obvious appearance. For men, it's a little more subtle. It's appearance based on performance. So anything that you do that could be perceived as looking bad, if you fail in a relationship, that goes straight into the heart of your own sense of self-worth. So people would rather, that's the madness of the ego, they'd rather stay in an uncomfortable situation and bear the burden of that than feel shame in terms of societal pressure.
I know so many people that talk badly about their wives or husbands or whatever it is. And I come home and I think to myself, why? Why would you, how do you rewire a generation? Not even a generation now, because, society at this point, that it's so outdated to make it so hard and such a failure to leave somebody, because it shouldn't be that hard, and it becomes also giant. It's not even that. Lots of people now stay just for all the wrong reasons, which is the money, the children, mostly the money, to be honest.
Yeah.
How do we rewire people that, it's not a failure. It's a chapter.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, it's rewiring in terms of language, narrative, right?
But even the government, to be honest, because they make it so hard to get unmarried. So then it becomes you're not only
paperwork,
letting them down, you're letting
Yeah. But again, it goes back to that keyword safety. Like you said, a lot of people will stay in a circumstance because of predominantly or primary money, and then secondary probably kids. But it's there's a feeling of security. Why do people stay in jobs that they hate? Same thing, right? There's that comfort to some degree of getting a paycheck at the end of the month so that they know that they can stay alive. So it's very primal. It's really a survival instinct. It's not to do with personal authorship or choice.
So when you speak at something like this,
Yeah.
like how would you rewire society and some of the beliefs that they have given? You know, because it is even beyond our parents, because our parents were wired by somebody, right? It's this, like, whatever this unforeseen wall is that
Yeah.
is society, because you always go, well, who's society? And no one can name
And
anyone.
who are they?
Yeah, exactly. And I always give the example, Henry VIII had 8 wives, you know, so we're not looking up to him. Princess Diana had, you know, 8 lovers apparently. We're not, you know, and we're looking
God
up to
bless
her,
them. Right.
which is fine. No, you know, do whatever you want. But my point
Yeah.
is, none of them were living by it.
No, I
The
think
rules that we've given ourselves.
Well, to answer your question about this conference, you know, it's really, for me, what I'm focused on here is more to do with longevity and wellness. And I
Like
think
mental health?
mental health is a precursor. For the particular subject matter of the conference, they're looking more at the general longevity, wellness, and healthcare. For me, that all stems from mental health. And
Well, if you're in a miserable marriage, you can't be mentally that happy, can you? I mean, like,
Well,
there's nothing worse than being in a miserable relationship. Come on.
No, but then the question is, you know, chicken and the egg. Like, are you in a miserable relationship and hence you have poor mental health? Or is it because you have poor mental health, you're in a miserable relationship? Touche.
Don't know.
It's all self-fulfilling, you know, like the way that we look at the world is the way that life will show up. I mean, it's the observer effect in quantum physics. You know, again, like I said with Henry Ford's quote, whether you believe you can or you believe you can't, you're right. You will find evidence for your beliefs. That's the way the brain works.
So how are you reprogramming people? Like, if I come to you, how are you going to reprogram these beliefs that have been put inside me? Well, actually, I'm an interesting one because I actually have reprogrammed myself. I have unprogrammed everything that my parents told me. If my parents told me that I had to do something, I did the absolute opposite just to piss them off.
Right.
Why am I that way?
Well, that's part of your defiance and tyrannical nature, and it's where, especially in teenage years, you know, we're trying to forge our own sense of independence, so we're going to go against any sort of authority. And then that can stick, you know, because if it works, if you get the outcomes, we're always going to be defaulting back to what do we think worked. So if somebody in their teens recognize, oh shit, if I fight against whatever the standards are and the social expectations and I get results, then you're going to keep reinforcing that program. But it can become destructive too.
Yeah. So how would you reprogram somebody that's not as defiant as me, that's always done the right thing? Because actually, weirdly enough, in big families like mine, there's always one defiant one. There's always one that's, you know, plays by the rule book as the golden child. There's always one, you know.
Somewhere in the middle, lost in the mix. Yeah, first of all, I don't unless someone's willing to, because that's the number one rule is the ego is designed to defend itself.
Well, I presume if they've come to you, they're ready to.
Yeah, so if it's somebody like that, we would look at, okay, what is the underlying core belief? So if somebody thinks that, for example, like you said, they're the golden child, typically they're going to have some sort of program that is like, I mustn't do anything wrong, I mustn't embarrass my parents. So there's always code at the deepest level.
I've always embarrassed my parents.
Yeah, which makes sense for your stereotype, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is where we've got to get down to the deep, like at what point did that child, and typically in a family like that can happen where the child witnesses usually the oldest one who's being defiant and the rebel and creating so much havoc and stress for the parents.
Me.
Yeah. And so then the next child is like, ooh, I'm going to do everything I can. They witnessed the distress that was creating the parents. And so they will typically say, okay, I'm going to make sure that I am perfect and I behave. So there'll be some underlying code or story that, like, it's up to me to keep my parents happy. I mustn't do anything wrong. I mustn't make a mistake. And so if they were coming to me for help, I would ask them, what's it like to live in that world, you know, where you can't make a mistake? And if they really presence it, they'll say something like, I don't know, it's exhausting. It's so much pressure. I'm always second guessing myself. And then you start to see the byproduct of looking through those lenses. And then I would ask, I say, what's the validity of that statement? Is it absolutely true that you can't make a mistake? And of course, it might take a while, but they'll eventually get to the no. And then we start to crack open other possibilities. So if you didn't have to always get anything right, how could you feel? And then you see the breathing change and they're like, I guess I could do whatever I want.
So, because I mean, again, that's something that's so ingrained in you for so long. I can't imagine. I sort of start things like, I mean, not always, but, it's like going to one of these detox clinics or whatever, and you have to chew 50 times before your meal starts. I start things with all good intentions, and after a while, just slip back into my old habits. And because I have this very, very funny eating habit.
Okay.
You haven't seen me eat. But
The way you eat, or the what you eat, or
no,
all
the way
above?
I eat. So before you will have sat down, I will have finished my food and have probably gone up for more, because I'm so used to having to eat at extreme pace
Because of big family.
boarding school.
Oh, okay.
They used to take your food, and I cannot
Right.
I can't change. I've tried.
Yeah.
I've done the chewing thing. I've done the breathing through everything.
Yeah.
Obviously, I know no one's taking my food, people, but it's just it's how I've just.
Yeah, it's primal.
It's in me. I went
Yeah.
to boarding schools from 6 to 18, so I've
Yeah.
always eaten like that, and it's
Yeah.
very funny. And people always go, "Slow down,"
Yeah.
and I'm like, "Oh my god, I don't even, I'm not even aware I'm doing it."
Yeah.
But like something like that, say, because obviously I don't really care at this stage. It's fine. It's at my own table, and you can all laugh. But I don't know how I would change that, because I forget. It's so subconscious.
That's what I'm saying. It's just primal. And in this case, with all of the things that I work with, anybody, regardless of their age, it stems from childhood trauma. That's a trauma. You might not say, well, it's really like some kids are being abused physically, sexually, and all the rest. But it is, because it's appealing to the ultimate imperative of your brain, which is to survive.
Yeah.
I mean, and there's
Oh,
nothing.
you're
probably
hungry.
more
That was traumatic. You're very hungry. You're not getting any more food. So like you're going to eat fast.
I was going to say, there's nothing that's, more primitive in terms of its value than food.
Yeah.
So it makes perfect sense. Yeah. So it would take some discernment, and for you to really look at things like, is it true that if you don't eat, that you're not going to be okay?
No, you're just hungry and you get headaches when you're a child.
I know, but so even the way you speak, yeah. So it's a one way that the brain is like protecting itself when it uses the word you. So it's very subtle. So, but then again, do you always know you're going to get a headache? Always.
No, I mean, now it's not even about the amount of food now, because I don't really eat that much anymore. But I mean, I will eat at record speed.
Yeah.
Even my kids, everybody's just left there. He's always like, Sergio will be like, "Oh my God, you've already finished." He hasn't even sat down.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, he's like, "Just wait."
Right. So for you, what's interesting is, like, first of all, I ask a couple of questions, and sometimes you deflect and don't answer.
Yeah.
But there's again, like I was saying, the badge of honor. Like you were saying, why do people stay in these situations? There's something that you get as a payoff by telling this story. It kind of reinforces a little bit of your rebellion, like that. Because if you really wanted to, you said before, when you're down to 20 grand, you had nothing, you were able to figure it out. So you've established your ability to make change.
That's because I like shiny things, and I had to have nice things. I had in my head, thought to myself, I'll be fine in a 1-bedroom flat with a flip down bed. But then I thought to myself afterwards, no, I wasn't built for that.
Right. Yeah, depending on what age. But again, so there's something, it's just very subtle, but maybe to look at, is that you're not actually that worried about the speed with which you eat.
No, I mean, I know. I mean, obviously it's offensive to some people watching, but...
Which is only then based on your conditioning that you shared with us today, that's part of the payoff. Because you like to be a little bit confrontational.
Ah. I mean, with my kids and my husband, I just genuinely, it's a bit like my duck walk, I suppose. I'm just thinking of things for you how you would teach me or rebuild me to think about that all the time, because it's something I have to do 3 times a day, obviously.
Yeah.
I have to eat.
You don't have to. Again, so you look at language, right? You're creating resistance. You don't have to. Right. So in the way that you speak, there's a lot of resistance. But again, I wouldn't change this, because as I just established it's actually part of your identity. You get a little payoff from it. It's that little bit of that edge about you, like kind of, it's a subtle fuck you, I'm going to do whatever I want.
Yeah, I guess.
So,
strange one. I mean, I wouldn't mind being a bit more ladylike, but okay.
I just don't think you're interested. So don't lie.
You're right. I probably don't want it enough to change. Is that what you're saying?
I'd get rid of the probably.
Okay, I don't want it enough to change.
Yeah.
Okay, so how would, what kinds of things in, the Peter Crone world are the things that men or women you find the most common problem that people come to you with to uncondition, them in?
I mean, it runs the gamut. As human beings, we can have a multitude of different stories, but underneath it, there's going to be very similar subconscious limitations. Most people can relate to some feeling of inadequacy. They're not enough in some regard, wealthy enough, pretty enough, old enough, young enough, in shape enough, whatever it is. So that's very common, where there's a feeling of like that comparison, that they use it to be less than.
Well, that's true, because that keeps them in a box.
Yeah.
And I think, do you feel like social media is one of the biggest problems for that?
I don't think it's one. No, the biggest problem is the way that we view ourselves. So then, as I said, the brain's just going to look for evidence to confirm your beliefs. So whether you find it through family, friends, loved ones, social media, it doesn't really matter. It's like if I told you that you're going to win a white Mercedes in 2 weeks.
I am.
Yeah. For the next 2 weeks, what are you going to see everywhere, right?
White Mercedes.
Yes, because that's been planted in your consciousness. Now, did they suddenly appear on the streets? No, it's just that you're reorienting your perspective to see things. So likewise, with the subconscious, we're wired in a certain way, and we're going to find evidence for why we're not enough, why we're not loved. And the big one, to answer your question again, is safety. A lot of humans just don't feel safe.
Is that why you think the vision boards work so well for people?
I don't know if they work that well.
Oh, you don't think they do?
No. It's like affirmations, affirmations, it's a bit crass, but it's like whipped cream on shit. It's like you feel lousy about yourself, and then you stand in the mirror, this sort of carpe diem, I love you. But that mechanism of behavior is only a compensation for the fact that deeper down you don't.
Right.
I'd much rather deal with the don't as opposed to trying to,
so
compensate.
So you don't believe in giving yourself the post-it note thing that I've seen people do to remind yourself that you are beautiful and clever and all of these things that people put.
Yeah, it's not so much I don't believe in it, it's a strategy. There's a lot of things in life that you can do as a strategy that will help. But it's like someone goes to the doctor because they've got high blood pressure, and their version of post-it note is they get beta blockers.
Mm-hmm. Well,
right?
Yes.
Do you know what I'm saying? So it's like it helps, because when they go home and they start taking it, doesn't actually resolve anything, because if they come off the drug, it's not a medicine, right? A lot of people think they're taking medication. They're not. They're taking drugs. Medicines are curative or preventative. If you have to keep getting a refill, you don't have a medicine, you have a drug.
I agree with that.
And
I always say.
Then you see nothing's actually been resolved. The blood pressure is still there. So that's the same with the psychology. If people are doing affirmations or putting Post-its up, that's their version of a drug. It's an addiction to trying to placate and mitigate a deeper feeling of woe. That's where I go. I go to the deeper level, investigate the validity of that story about yourself, wherever it came from, age 3, 5, 10, or whatever mum or dad said. And when you realize it's not a truth, then you're free. You don't need affirmations.
No, but I understand all that. But with all due respect, I have about an hour with you.
You have a what?
An hour with you every week or whatever it is. So how do I reaffirm and remind myself when I'm not with you? How do people continue? What is my homework? How am I going to reprogram myself when you're not sat in front of me? Because you make a lot of sense when you're here. Mm-hmm. When you get home and you re-talk to yourself, then what happens? You're not there.
No, so I would assert that, first of all, my work is sufficiently powerful that when you see something you've never seen before, you can't unsee it. So that's awareness, which is step 1. And then step 2 is practicing being the new version of you. That's what does need support. And the older you get, the harder it is.
With people.
No, just by living. So, for example, if somebody's in a relationship or in a work situation or a health situation or a financial situation that had some sort of previous constraint associated with it, when we undo that, immediately they're going to have a different relationship. So then it's practicing. It's like literally being a different human being that you're not familiar with. Think about acting, right? I started with a lot of actors when I was doing my work back in the day, and they are paid to pretend to be somebody else.
Yes.
Everybody can do that. So really, you're recognizing who have I been pretending to be, albeit for your whole life, right? If somebody's been pretending to be not enough, it might have started when they're 5 and now they're 45. So they've got 40 years of pretending. It's still pretending, but they think it's them because they've done it for 40 years. Mm-hmm. So then they get to pretend when they see, oh, it's not true that I'm not enough. Who could you be? God, I could be free. I'd be much more joyous and self-expressed. Okay, practice that. Now,
Very interesting.
yeah, it takes a while compared to 40 years. That's what I was saying. The older somebody gets, the harder it is. But that's the nature of it. You're rewiring and reprogramming through awareness. And then by practicing being the type of person who no longer lives inside that prison. Think about someone who's been in prison literally for 30, 40 years. They come out, they might to begin with not know, where am I going to get a job? Am I going to be in a relationship? But at least they're out, and now they just have to figure out who could they be in the absence of bars.
Well, in a way, that's also like women who have left relationships where they have lived sort of not controlled, but in the gilded sort of world of being taken care of, and now they're not. And that is a very, as I said, a very prevalent problem today.
Yeah.
Because marriages aren't going the mile because we have so many options and so many things, dangled carrots out there.
Yeah.
That people have to learn to be another person. And that's why that's where also the trouble with that is also, as you know, growth means that you lose friendships and outgrow people. And so all of it at once is a lot.
Again, none of this is easy. It might be simple when I talk about it, but I also have compassion for the fact that it's not easy, and especially the longer you've lived in a certain particular pattern, the harder it is to both even reveal it and then certainly get beyond it. But it's like you're going from one prison to the next. Someone's in an unhealthy relationship, unhealthy job. They leave that, but now they're faced with a different kind of fear. So that's the raison d'etre to being human, as far as I'm concerned, is you keep revealing your fears until such time that you transcend them.
But I mean, I know that it happens to me all the time, and I'm not a therapist in any shape or form. I've just lived a certain life. And obviously because I've got this microphone, people sort of ask me questions, but I can only say what I have done in my life. But if I get those questions, you must get those questions. Yes, I'm unhappy, and yes, I want to improve my life, and I see other people living that, and you tell them to go do it, but then they go, but then then what? How am I going to support myself? How am I going to find a home? Those are the difficult questions where they get stuck, right?
Yeah,
and
scary.
Do you offer help people with sort of mapping out things, or no, just answering their own questions?
And again, it's very subtle, and I know in a podcast conversation it's hard sometimes for people to comprehend. You just have to actually see me work with someone, which is all over my Instagram.
Yeah.
So when somebody sees something they've never seen before, they literally have a new perspective, which generates new thoughts, new feelings, and new actions automatically. So that's the practice part. So it's not so much
so they can answer for themselves.
Yeah, it's self-generated. Now, they might not be familiar, but they'll have a state. It's we're human beings, right? And most people will think of us as human doings. So the being part, meaning, are you being miserable? Are you being resigned? Are you being not enough? Or are you being possibility? Are you being freedom? Are you being love? And then that generates a different human response.
Isn't it funny that we have been conditioned that misery is better than living, not in fear, but in a lesser life, as it were, or, having to go to work or having to sort of take care of oneself.
Yeah, it's nuts.
It's nuts.
It's insane. I mean, when I started my work, that was the thing that fascinated me the most, is that people would declare so passionately what they want in life, but their ego would still want to be right, and they would sabotage it or not even pursue it. I'm like, it's just, congratulations, you get to be right about your inadequacies. That's really inspiring.
Don't even get me going. My parents are probably listening to this, but I had that conversation. My mum just wrote me a text last week going, I wish we had moved to the sun or something, because they love sun. They've been saying they were going to move to the sun well, they're now, my father's 80, and they live in the Cotswolds, which is beautiful, don't get me wrong, but it's very cold, very wet, very expensive to live when you're older. And I'd rather have a small apartment and a balcony and live in this sunlight every day. And but we didn't do it, darling, because for all you children.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So and it's the martyrdom is her story.
Yes. And it's like, no, it's not for us.
No.
And
that's again right there, without knowing your mum or, however that conversation went, I can just immediately hear the way that her ego is maintaining control of itself is trying to be somebody in the way that she appears to others, which is this great mum. Like they sacrifice for you. That's where she gets her value.
yeah, it's funny because it's, again, their own feeling. Like I've always said, if they moved to the sun or got a house in Spain, trust me, we'd all be there.
Right.
You know what I mean? Probably more than we are in the Cotswolds, I can
Yeah.
assure you.
Yeah.
But it's their fear,
Of course.
not mine. We don't have any friends there. If friends at 81, they're not running around. You know what I mean? It's like,
Again, but it's the programming that won't allow it.
yeah,
The unconscious commitment that she has to being seen as a good mother.
no.
Right.
I mean, I think the English are a very, very interesting topic because it's so ingrained in who we are,
Yeah.
as people and how we've been brought up.
Yeah.
But thank you, Peter, because it's always fascinating to talk to you. I could talk to you for hours, but it's funny to know that all of these things we've talked ourselves into.
Mm-hmm. It's all self-created. That's
Yeah.
the good and the bad news. Literally, the only obstacle we have is our own view of ourselves. And that's not necessary to say it is easy, but to be able to even see what your view is, that takes a lot of reflection. That's why one of my more popular quotes, I say, life will present you with people and circumstances to reveal where you're not free.
That's amazing. So last question, is it mostly young people that come to you or older people? Because
Across the gamut. Yeah.
that's when they're now trying, because so many
Yeah.
people want to find them now with the new longevity and all of this, are trying to find themselves.
Yeah. And also, when you're young, you're typically like, whatever, you're like, who cares? As you said, you're like live in a flat with a pull down bed or whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's like, it doesn't matter. But when you get to that place where things start to become significant, you're in a relationship, you might be having kids, you're trying to start a business, or you become successful, like meaning financially, but then you're like, wait a minute, I've got all the resources, but I'm still miserable. I would say that's more my clientele.
We all know a few of those.
Yeah.
Tell everyone how they can find you.
Sitting on Caroline's couch.
For the foreseeable future, because he doesn't like the
Yes,
traffic
exactly.
in Dubai.
At Peter Crone on Instagram, petercrone.com website. It's all just Peter Crone.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Uncut and Uncensored. Don't forget to subscribe, and speak to you next week.